Donald Trump held that thing that he did. I'm saying thing because it wasn't really a press conference. No follow-ups allowed. The questions were softballish, But let's take a look at a little bit. Tony, I don't know what we have first queued up, but go ahead. I don't typically put any stock in polls, but the donations give credence to Kamala gaining ground. Yeah, thank you, Karen, for mentioning the donations. Money, again, another sad aspect of American politics. Money is a litmus test for how well a candidate is doing and also how enthusiastic the populace is about supporting a candidate, particularly when you look at what? First-time donors or repeat donors. And they have a lot of first-time donors in the Kamala Harris group that has made these record donations, $300 million. What do you have, Tony, next? Go ahead. This is Trump from yesterday.
A small number of people relatively going to the Capitol. But
January
you never
6th,
see
he's
the
talking
picture
about.
of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken. I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people. If not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. They said I had 25,000, and he had 1 million people, and I'm okay with it because I liked Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah.
So the question...
I mean, we know it's not true, and he had pictures doctored.
The question that prompted that even was wild. It was, what do you think of the size of Kamala Harris's crowds? It was the implication being there seems to be an enthusiasm on the part of her voters, right? And what does he go right into? I've addressed much bigger crowds. I've had the biggest crowds in the history of politics. In fact, if you look at the pictures of Martin Luther King's speech and my speech, same real estate, same area, my crowd is bigger than Martin Luther King. I mean, it's deranged. It's really deranged. Yeah. And even if it were true, and of course it's not even in the same universe as truth, why would you want to somehow one-up MLK? Why would you want to one-up Martin Luther King Jr., a revered civil rights leader whose life was taken in service of bringing civil rights to those who didn't have it at the time? And you could argue still don't have many of those rights when it comes to voter disenfranchisement, this kind of thing. But anyway, my point is there's no end game that's worth it. But he can't help himself. He can't help himself but compare himself to Lincoln, to Washington, to Martin Luther King Jr. It's madness. Here is another thing that he visited in the course of that rambling press conference from Mar-a-Lago yesterday.
Well, I know Willie Brown very well. In fact, I went down in a helicopter with him. We thought maybe this is the end. We were in a helicopter going to a certain location together, and there was an emergency landing. This was not a pleasant landing, and Willie was he was a little concerned. So I know him pretty well. I mean, I haven't seen him in years. But he told me terrible things about her. But this is what you're telling me anyway, I guess. But he had a big part in what happened with Kamala. But he I don't know, maybe he's changed his tune, but he was not a fan.
So I know Willie Brown from years ago. That's plausible, right? We flew in a helicopter together, and we, weren't sure we were going to make it. That sounded plausible. It's so specific, and, he didn't say it in a braggy way. So you're kind of thinking, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I understand it might have been ancient history. Well, turns out it never happened. Here is Willie Brown on this question about knowing Trump and that helicopter ride.
So you were not in a helicopter with him that almost crashed?
No.
That's your answer, right? Okay.
He's dreaming.
Okay. I have heard you talk about.
There you go. That's, by the way, if Trevor in Hollywood is listening, I'd love that laugh as a drop, because that was just too good.
He goes on to say nothing but positive things about Kamala Harris. And it's pretty crazy. So they went back and they said, well, gosh, maybe Trump mistook Jerry Brown for Willie Brown. So they go and they ask Jerry Brown, hey, you know, former Governor Jerry Brown, were you ever on a chopper with Trump that almost went down when you were maybe touring wildfires or something? And Jerry Brown goes, no, it never happened. So they're like, okay, well, maybe it was Gavin Newsom, and he's getting Newsom and Brown mixed up. So they go to Gavin Newsom and they say, Newsom, have you ever been on a chopper with Trump when you were touring wildfires that went down? And Trump's like, Newsom says, what? No, never. We don't know who he's talking about.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, it was madness, and let's face it, he does it so well. You know, he serves up BS like a short order chef, and you're just like, it sounds believable. I just told you when he first said it, I thought, oh, that's conceivable, like it could have happened. But of course, it's just one more thing that Trump is pulling out of his rear and making it sound believable. Now, Trump agrees to this debate plan, the ABC September 10th debate plan. Remember, he'd originally pulled out of that, said, hey, my deal was with Biden, but now that Biden's not in it, I'm not doing the debate on the 10th. Well, now he's back in. And it's no wonder, right? I've just mentioned to you, he is desperate. He has to change the narrative. Things have gone very well for the Harris people thus far. Hey, look, it's still a dead heat, essentially. You're within the margin of error. So, you know, Democrats, I wouldn't get too overconfident, and you still have to show up in big, big numbers. The other thing I would say to Democrats is you're dealing with states that are spring-loaded to, A, disenfranchise you, and B, as we've talked about on this show, have people in key positions who won't certify the vote, regardless of what it is. So you can even win the election, and they won't certify. These are things that will be adjudicated. There are lawyers on both sides waiting to go, but I'm just making the point that, you know, you can really get out over your skis on this because of some good polling, but the polling is so tight that any misstep could change things. So they're expecting huge viewership on September 10th. And again, Trump is also pushing, I believe, another debate that might happen over on Fox News. But the only debate that has been agreed to is September 10th on ABC. And then one other wild card that I'll just mention on the September 10th ABC debate is
The Mark Thompson Show.
Is that, you know, Trump is in a lawsuit with who? ABC for defamation. He is suing George Stephanopoulos for defamation. Now, that might be DOA, but right now that is going to trial. There was an attempt on the part of ABC to have the trial thrown out, have the defamation case thrown out, and the judge said, no, I'll hear it. So there is that. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.